Welcome to One American News Investigates. I'm Daniel Baldwin. The Rubicon has officially been crossed.
That is Donald J. Trump, defendant in New York versus Donald Trump, found guilty on all 34 felony counts. That is the verdict here in this case.
Guilty on 34 counts of falsifying business records, typically a misdemeanor, elevated to a felony under a novel legal theory.
It was a rigged trial. We wanted a venue change where we could have a fair trial. We didn't get it. We wanted a judge change. We wanted a judge that wasn't conflicted. And obviously he didn't do that.
Nearly 10 years of work from the Democrat machine to investigate, indict, prosecute, and convict President Trump culminated with this verdict. A verdict that had Trump-deranged media crackpots popping champagne.
What was your reaction? Well, my reaction was I was at Costco buying, 10 boxes of Keurig coffee, and my watch started to buzz, and I got so excited I started leaking a little bit.
Yet anyone with a shred of logic and common sense saw the clear picture.
There is reasonable doubt all over this case.
Give me the man, and I will give you the case against him. Such was the mentality of Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg.
This is not a real criminal case. This is a get Trump case. And it's part of what Bragg ran for office.
The target may have been the biggest political outsider the country has ever seen, but the goal was to pull back the vote away from the American people and settle the 2024 election in the caverns of an ice-cold courtroom in New York City. In this edition of OAN Investigates, we examine how the radical left pulled off this historic abuse of power in their quest to destroy the man who poses the single biggest threat to the bureaucratic elite. That very same bureaucratic elite are threatening to destroy the very fabrics of our own democracy. After slightly more than 10 hours of jury deliberations, a New York City jury found President Donald Trump guilty on all 34 felony counts of falsifying business records.
I did my job. Our job is to follow the facts and the law without fear or favor.
At its heart, a $130,000 payment from former Trump lawyer Michael Cohen to Stormy Daniels, an adult film star, in October 2016. That's what this case was about. The prosecution alleged that throughout 2017, Trump, quote, made and caused falsified business records that were curated by the Trump Organization to keep the payment hidden from public eye.
They've tried to kind of snake this Rubik's Cube, if you will, to fit the actions to a crime. What they're alleging at its base is a misdemeanor that has expired with the statute of limitations. In order for that misdemeanor to not be thrown out because of the statute of limitations, you then need to find an underlying crime.
This same case has been investigated by numerous different bodies. The Federal Election Commission dropped its case in 2021. Alvin Bragg's predecessor, Cy Vance, did not pursue an indictment of Trump in this very same case. In addition, falsifying business records is typically a misdemeanor in the state of New York. But the statute of limitations had expired, essentially killing the case.
The New York case is a really bad joke. I mean, the prosecutor who brought that case ought to be subject to discipline. It's the weakest indictment I've seen in 60 years of practicing law. There is nothing to it at all.
The zombie case, as some call it. Now, in order to resurrect this case from the dead, Bragg needed to elevate it to a Class E felony using New York Penal Law Section 175.10. Quote, a person is guilty of falsifying business records in the first degree when he commits the crime of falsifying business records in the second degree, and when his intent to defraud includes an intent to commit another crime.
Because the statute of limitations has expired on those misdemeanor bookkeeping charges, he's trying to elevate those charges to the felony level so that he can bring them within the statute of limitations.
In other words, the prosecution needed to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the way that the $130,000 payment was listed was fraudulent, that Trump knew about it, and it was his idea. But that would just get them to a misdemeanor. In order to elevate it to a felony, they needed to show that Trump falsified business records with the intention of committing a second crime. The second crime they settled on was a New York State election law, Section 17.152. It bars individuals from conspiring to, quote, promote or prevent the election of any person to public office by unlawful means. This is also a misdemeanor with a 2-year statute of limitations. In other words, Bragg added 2 expired misdemeanors to concoct this felony. But the language in the New York State election law remains vague. What is the definition of unlawful means? Now, according to jury instructions, Judge Juan Merchan, the judge overseeing the case, revealed that the jury did not need to agree upon the specific method of the unlawful means. In fact, the judge gave the jury the option to pick from 3 unlawful means options: a Federal Election Campaign Act violation, another falsifying business records crime, or a tax violation. The jury did not need to agree on which of these 3 crimes Trump allegedly committed, just that he sought to promote his candidacy via one of those 3 unlawful means. And he would consider it unanimous, since it fell under that unlawful means umbrella.
Yeah, I think the prosecution's theory is about as clear as mud. It's a case that should have never been brought. President Trump did absolutely nothing wrong.
So, the prosecution needed to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Donald Trump falsified business records with the intention of violating a state election crime by attempting to commit 3 other separate crimes. It's totally straightforward. Not confusing at all.
Cases. I mean, to say that this is clown car, banana republic stuff, I think would probably be optimistic if anything.
To make matters worse, the judge did not reveal which of the 3 unlawful means options the jury ultimately settled on.
We don't know what he was found guilty of. Which of the 3 theories of Bragg's prosecution was he guilty of? The jury instruction says you have to find that he willfully violated the law. And they did not define willfully. Willfully is a very strict legal term. It means you have to know the law that you're violating. He has to know he was violating the campaign law. And that, based on the evidence, was not there at all.
It's extremely problematic that we still don't know what that underlying unlawful means was that the jury decided on. Not only was this not clear throughout almost the entirety of the trial until right before the closing arguments and when the judge instructed the jury on what they had to decide, but even after that, the exact nature of those unlawful means was somewhat murky. And as you mentioned, what's particularly problematic is that not all 12 jurors had to agree on that underlying unlawful means, essentially that underlying crime, what's interesting about that, even those on the left who have generally been supportive of this prosecution, those who dislike Donald Trump, even they said that they thought this judge would instruct the jury that there needed to be unanimity on that underlying crime to insulate any verdict on appeal. But obviously, that didn't happen.
Yet it didn't matter. The venue is in a Democratic stronghold that broke 87% for Joe Biden in 2020.
I think they knew there was a lot of pressure on themselves to get it right, but at the end of the day, I still think they voted with their politics.
Trump's attempts to move the venue of the trial to a more favorable district were denied. With a trial in that setting, it's fair to wonder whether Donald Trump ever had a shot at a fair jury.
But we're in a time and an age where sort of culture meets politics, and politics pervades everything, and people vote with their politics. And so a different venue that would be more red probably would have had a little bit of a different outcome for him. Maybe he would have gotten a hung jury.
To recap, Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg combined 2 misdemeanors whose statute of limitations had each expired, and the first of which had already been investigated by his predecessor and the FEC, to concoct a felony whose underlying crime has still not been revealed, in a venue where 87% of the jury pool voted against the defendant. Seems totally fair, but the nightmare continued for President Trump. When we return, we'll look at the judge overseeing the case and why he should have simply stepped away from the case altogether. Welcome back. Repeatedly throughout the trial, President Trump lambasted Judge Juan Merchan as, quote, highly conflicted.
We're going to be appealing it on many different things. He wouldn't allow us to have witnesses. He wouldn't allow us to talk. He wouldn't allow us to do anything. The judge was a tyrant.
Judge Juan Merchan repeatedly showed anti-Trump bias throughout the duration of the trial. For starters, in July 2020, Judge Merchan, according to FEC records, donated $15 to Biden for president, $10 to the Progressive Turnout Project, and $10 to Stop Republicans. Under Section 100.5 of the New York Code of Judicial Conduct, sitting judges are barred from, quote, directly or indirectly engaging in any political activity, including, quote, making a contribution to a political organization or candidate. To be clear, Judge Juan Merchan, based on this alone, should have never been the judge in a case involving Donald Trump.
But Judge Merchan should be nowhere near this case. Not only is he already tied to other prosecutions related to the Trump organization, now Judge Merchan has this case. Then he will have Steve Bannon's trial in New York City. His fingerprints are all over these trials and really heavily in favor of the prosecution.
Judge Merchan's adult daughter is the president and partner of Authentic Campaigns, a company that runs digital advertising campaigns for Democratic candidates. Authentic Campaigns contracted work with the Biden campaign in 2020. Congressman Adam Schiff, now running for Senate, wrote a testimonial saying they helped build a digital program that exceeded all expectations.
Authentic Campaigns has taken in tens of millions of dollars from top Democrat officials, including Kamala Harris, Adam Schiff, Joe Biden. She works for very progressive left-wing nonprofits and organizations.
In other words, Judge Merchan's daughter works with clients who hate President Trump, and she will likely stand to profit significantly off of a guilty verdict.
Are they involved in these online solicitations using the Alvin Bragg case, the one that her father is overseeing and refusing to step down from? Are they using this case in media, digital media campaigns to raise money for Adam Schiff? That is a whole other degree of conflict.
Yet Judge Merchan not only refused to step aside, he gagged President Trump from speaking publicly when Trump and his lawyers highlighted the apparent conflict.
I'm under a gag order, nasty gag order, where I've had to pay thousands of dollars in penalties and fines and was threatened with jail.
Judge Merchan slapped a gag order on Trump that prevented him from criticizing the judge and the DA's family, witnesses, jurors, and others connected with the case.
It is just unheard of for a judge to put a gag order on a criminal defendant. This really started when these Democrat judges did this to Trump supporter Roger Stone, and it turns the Constitution on its head from a shield that protects us from the government to a sword the government uses to come after us. This is truly un-American to gag a criminal defendant.
Not only is he a former president of the United States, he's also a leading contender to once again be the president of the United States. And yet you have individuals like Michael Cohen, Stormy Daniels, others who are attacking him in the media. The media itself is reporting breathlessly on some of the very salacious details that are coming out of the trial. And yet, under the terms of this gag order, Donald Trump isn't allowed to respond directly to many of those claims. I think anyone who looks at that fairly and objectively recognizes that that's a very real First Amendment concern, and very concerning that the judge in this case thought it appropriate to enter this gag order. President
Trump repeatedly emphasized this was unconstitutional. In addition, Judge Merchan repeatedly showed anti-Trump bias throughout the trial proceedings. He severely limited the testimony of former Federal Election Commission Chair Brad Smith, so much so that the defense simply dropped him as a witness. Judge Merchan berated defense witness Robert Costello for his, quote, tone on the stand. He excoriated Trump attorney Todd Blanche for making a slight reference to the law, while permitting the prosecution to opine on end regarding the law all day and all night. If that weren't enough, Judge Merchan's wife previously worked for New York Attorney General Letitia James, who not only campaigned on getting Trump, but also brought the $350 million civil fraud case against the former president. It seems fairly obvious Yet New York's Advisory Committee on Judicial Ethics ruled that Merchan's impartiality, quote, cannot reasonably be questioned based on his past, quote, modest political contributions or his daughter's work activities. To recap, the judge donated money to Trump's direct political opponents, people who could theoretically benefit from a conviction. His daughter could financially benefit from such conviction, and the judge's wife is tied to the woman pursuing a massive civil case against the former president in the same state. Yet don't you dare question Judge Merchan's impartiality.
Merchan should have recused himself as soon as it became apparent that before it became apparent, once he knew that his daughter profited to the tune of $93 million for her company off of politicians like Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, who, by the way, are on the ticket opposing Donald J. Trump. Right there, recuse yourself. It's that simple.
When we return, we examine how the sitting president of the United States may have his fingerprints all over this very trial. Stay tuned. Welcome back. President Donald Trump has been emphatic that this trial was orchestrated by the Biden White House.
Just so you understand, this is all done by Biden and his people. Maybe his people more importantly. I don't know if Biden knows too much about it, because I don't know if he knows about anything.
On Friday, May 31st, right after the guilty verdict, President Joe Biden was asked a question by White House reporters.
Donald Trump refers to himself as a political prisoner and blames you directly. What's your response to that, sir? Do you think the conviction will have an impact on the campaign?
It's been said, a picture is worth 1,000 words.
First of all, let's describe the smile as it was. It was sinister. He turned very slowly to the White House press corps. He grinned, paused, and then turned and walked away.
A picture is worth 1,000 words indeed. From day one, Biden's presidency has been an abject disaster. Bidenomics created mass inflation, increasing prices by nearly 20%. A wide-open southern border has caused devastating harms to American citizens. A world embroiled in chaos ever since the disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal, costing 13 U.S. service members their lives. A troubled son stuck in a Delaware courtroom on trial, and simply an inability to walk up a flight of stairs. Biden's poll numbers are plummeting. They need Donald Trump out of the picture. Could this be a calculated and coordinated effort to not only keep Trump off the campaign trail, but also get a dirty conviction before the election? A coordinated effort to get Trump sounds outrageous, but Biden's fingerprints may be all over this Manhattan case.
Matthew Colangelo got deployed from the number 3 office in the Biden Justice Department. He was a senior Biden political appointee, and then he left that to go serve as a line attorney in the Manhattan DA's office, the Soros-funded Manhattan DA, Alvin Bragg. He had no relevant experience other than it was Colangelo's job to run this lawfare. This is obviously a political hit by Biden and his political appointees to go after Trump.
In December of 2022, Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg hired Colangelo from Biden's DOJ to, quote, jumpstart their investigation into Trump. Highly irregular for someone to move from a senior position in the DOJ to become a prosecutor in a city district attorney's office. According to Federal Election Commission reports, the Democratic National Committee also paid Colangelo twice in January of 2018. The payments totaled $12,000 and were labeled, quote, political consulting. Colangelo delivered the opening arguments for the prosecution in the Trump trial. Colangelo left Biden's DOJ to join the Manhattan District Attorney's office shortly after Mark Pomerantz, an attorney in the DA's office investigating the Trump case, suddenly resigned in February 2022 due to Bragg's refusal to move forward with an indictment of the 45th president. Pomerantz's resignation letter read, quote, the public interest warrants the criminal prosecution of Mr. Trump, and such a prosecution should be brought without any further delay. Pomerantz had been granted a temporary leave of absence from the law firm Paul, Weiss, Rifkin, Wharton, and Garrison to work on the Trump case, the very same firm that hosted a fundraiser for Biden in June 2019. Even the New York Times noted, quote, "The hiring of an outsider is a highly unusual move for a prosecutor's office." Following Pomerantz's resignation letter, Bragg emphasized the investigation into Trump was ongoing, leading to the hiring of Matthew Colangelo. An indictment and conviction of Trump quickly followed. The Washington swamp knew a conviction was a slam dunk in the deep blue Manhattan. They likely hoped a conviction would decide the election in a dingy Manhattan courtroom, baking an easy win for Joe Biden. But the American people have said not so fast. Find out why after the break. Welcome back. The biggest question following President Trump's guilty verdict is how would it shake up the presidential race?
Joe Biden, this is going to backfire and backfire on you spectacularly. You're going to really regret having Matthew Colangelo deployed from your Justice Department to Bragg's office to bring these this bogus trial against Trump. It's going to turn him into Nelson Mandela. He's going to win in a landslide.
But why? Why could this guilty verdict backfire so spectacularly on the Democrat Party?
You're going to see a more diverse and inclusive MAGA movement because black people have been saying this for decades and everybody said they were too sensitive. Now you have a major political candidate that's completely relatable.
The American people have certainly rallied to his side. The Trump campaign and the RNC reeled in a whopping $141 million in the month of May.
Many of those small dollar donors had never given before. Not just not given to the president, they had not given on the Win Red platform, which is the Republican small dollar donation platform. They were brand new because they were watching this trial and they knew that it was rigged. They knew that the judicial system had been weaponized against the president and they wanted to voice their support.
A new Morning Consult poll following the verdict revealed Trump leading Biden by 1 point among registered voters. Trump held steady at 44%, but Biden actually dropped by 2 points.
People's opinions of the trial is pretty much baked in. We saw that beforehand. When the trial verdict came, we obviously went back in the field immediately and have been in the field for the several days following the trial, and we haven't seen the verdict really affecting movement in a negative way. So again, that tells us that for voters, this was all baked in. They knew that this was a sham.
From resurrecting and bootstrapping 2 expired misdemeanors into a felony, to the unknown second crime, to a conflicted judge who extinguished President Trump's First Amendment rights, to a Biden prosecutor who suddenly joined the Manhattan DA's team before the indictment, it became clear that President Trump is the ultimate victim of an unprecedented abuse of power. But will the American people let them get away with it?
The real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people.
I'm Daniel Baldwin. Stay tuned, stay informed every Saturday and Sunday for new editions of One American News Investigates. Until next time, thank you for watching.
For all of our viewers asking where to watch One American News, we'd like to introduce you to OAN Live. OAN Live is the best way to stay up to date on the hardest hitting news and talk shows. And the best part is OAN Live is only $4.99 a month. Credible, honest, unbiased reporting at a fraction of the cost of cable. Go to OANN.com and click on the link at the top of the page and easily sign up for news you can't get anywhere else.